Golos Tireless Pilgrim, the Field of the Dead variant, up against Yisan the Wanderer Bard, Erebos God of the Dead, and Baral Chief of Compliance. Yeah, I always forget Baral is legal in multiplayer. It's been banned in 1v1. Going to keep this hand because I think I might go in for Life from the Loam on turn 1 in the hope that we can mill some lands and get them back into hand. Yeah, I think I'm going to try and rely on Life from the Loam this game. And we get into a land anyway, so that's pretty good. Let's go for a Forest, Mana Crypt, and Life from the Loam. Then we've nothing to target with Life from the Loam, but we can still cast it, so we'll get that in the bin, ready for a Dredge next turn. And even if we don't mill into any lands, at least we've got lands to play from hand. A Wayfarer's Bauble from Erebos. And a Llanowar Elves from Yisan, so pretty much all of us making turn 1 plays. Test our luck with the Mana Crypt. We do get bolted by that immediately. We are going to bring Life from the Loam back, and there is Vesuva and Windswept Heath. So let's go Life from the Loam on those. Vesuva is for going after the Field of the Dead, of course. And then we'll play the land that our opponents know about. We'll go for a Snow Forest. Just in case there's a strip mine on our green source. Sapphire Medallion coming down for Baral. Followed by a Mana Crypt from Erebos, so everyone's getting a lot done in the early turns this game. Probably just cracking the Wayfarer's Bauble here. No, doesn't look like it. They're going straight in for their commander. And then the second commander of the game coming down, and that is a Tormod's Crypt, which is exile all cards from a target player's graveyard. They go straight after us because of that Life from the Loam. Well, I'm glad we didn't see it before Field of the Dead was in there. We got our Vesuva out, which is all that matters. I actually wasn't going to go for the Dredge yet anyway, but Life from the Loam is tough to lose anyway. But we get into Muldrotha, so we can still grab stuff out of the bin. Let's go for a snow-covered plains and we'll grab our commander here. So let's go in for a blue source here. We've got some blue cards in hand. We'll grab an island. Yeah, because we might have to go for Mystical Tutor into something. Don't really see what we want to grab with Mystical Tutor, to be honest. And now the fourth and final commander coming down, Baral, Chief of Compliance, and this is where the counter magic begins, I would think. They've got 6 in hand and a bunch of mana available because of the cost reduction from Sapphire Medallion and their commander. They go straight in for a Fabricate for only 1 mana. This is all instants and sorceries, isn't it? Yes. And of course they go for Sol Ring, as is pretty usual with Fabricate. And then a Thought Vessel. They're not holding up many instants and sorceries. This might not be a counterspell based deck. It might be one of those tap out blue decks. I'm actually looking at making Unesh soon, and I think that's the best way to make Unesh because the Sphinxes can be very expensive if you can't keep your commander in place. So I think going for free counter magic with Unesh is the best way to go. And that might be what our Baral opponent is doing. Now a Promise of Power, draw 5 and lose 5. They have not gone for the Entwine on that, they don't have the mana just yet. This is all occurring on turn 3, by the way. Everyone getting into Dorks and fast mana. They discard a Necropotence and Liliana of the Dark Realms. This is going to be too fast a game for Liliana, I think. Gotten the limit break off with her a few times in Yawgmoth though. Then Yisan just deciding to pass straight through the turn. Yisan now has the Summoning Sickness knocked off of there, so they're in no rush to activate that, I wouldn't have thought. We lose the flip again to the Mana Crypt. And there's a Gaia's Cradle. Yeah, Wasteland isn't going to do much of anything for us, but we might keep a Cabal Coffers out of play, something like that. We can't go for Anguished Unmaking, unfortunately. Yeah, I think we just have to hold up Mystical Tutor. So let's go Wasteland. And then we can swing in at the Erebos player. The more life they lose, the better. They typically want to gain it back in Erebos, but if we can keep them off life gain somehow, then they're going to struggle to stay in it and draw cards at the same time. Yeah, so I think we just have to go for that. Worst case scenario, we can go in for Windfall next turn, but I think we're going for a Cultivate with Mystical Tutor. Baral decided to cycle a Lonely Sandbar. And after that, just deciding to pass the turn, going straight over to the Erebos player now. Deciding to crack the Wayfarer's Bauble. And then at the end of Erebos' turn, Yisan gets activated. We'll see how much of a chain they go off on next turn. They go for the Sylvan Safekeeper. Not usually a card that you look for with the Yisan, but in multiplayer I suppose giving it Shroud is very important. So they continue to play on the Erebos' turn and pass straight through. We'll go in for Mystical Tutor onto our Cultivate. In fact, we could go for the desert one, couldn't we? What is that thing called? The Hour of Promise we could go for. Search for 2 lands and put them in tapped. Yeah, we'll go for that instead. And we lose the flip again to Mana Crypt. That's not on our side this game. Let's see if we can land an Hour of Promise. Search for 2 lands here. Baral does have mana untapped. But it goes straight through. So I say we go for Urborg and Field of the Dead. Urborg might help out our opponent if they get into Cabal Coffers, but yeah, we'll just risk it here, I think. Or we could go for Blighted Woodland. With Field of the Dead and a Blighted Woodland, we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we could go for that. That would give us more landfall. No, I'm going to go for Urborg because it switches on our black mana. Trigger Field of the Dead a couple of times from 2 lands entering. Then we'll go Vesuva onto Field of the Dead while we've got the chance. And now let's swing in at... let's go in at Yisan. Yisan just takes it, so we go in for Baral's turn now. And they've played this land, that is sack it and draw 2 cards. And at the end of Baral's turn, Erebos also playing on Baral's turn with the card draw from Erebos. Yeah, most of our opponents have quite a few cards in hand, so I don't mind going for Windfall in that scenario. Black Sun Zenith wipes out everything. I'm actually not against that because it will allow us to replay Golos, grab some red mana, and we'll be able to start activating Golos then. So the zombies go down, as well as Yisan and the Sylvan Safekeeper. I was actually thinking of trying to get rid of Sylvan Safekeeper with the Anguished Unmaking. No doubt our opponent would have sacrificed a forest to that, but takes mana off them at least. Now we're just seeing if Baral wants to counter this. I don't see why they would, to be honest. Oh, and going for Mystic Confluence. Oh no, not countering there. They're just going for bouncing Baral and drawing a couple of cards. And then they still have the mana to crack this if they want to. Do they? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no, they're 2 mana away, aren't they? This is 6 mana, not 4. Yeah. So they can't crack that. Bouncing Baral, drawing a couple of cards, so they go up to 6, so I definitely don't mind a Windfall now. But at least we know Baral is now running Counter Magic. And Erebos at the end of the turn having to discard the Eldest Reborn. Yisan coming straight back out. I would think Baral would allow Yisan to come down because it's probably Golos they're worried about. I wouldn't mind seeing a counterspell here though. Maybe got one, they might have been bluffing there, but they are holding priority. We lose the flip again to Mana Crypt. Alright, we've got 2 wheels there. We don't have red mana though. Let's attempt our Golos, see if we can get some counter magic out of the Baral player's hand. They allow it to come down, so perhaps they don't have counters. We'll grab ourselves a mountain to complete our colours. Then we instantly get into a couple of triggers from both of our Field of the Deads. And then we'll play Gaia's Cradle for more activations there. And I think we're just going to carry on holding up Anguished Unmaking. Yeah, I think we just carry on holding those things up. We could go in for Muldrotha, but we've nothing to actually do with Muldrotha. I actually had Kess in here as well, but I wanted Muldrotha for in case our lands get wastelanded. So that's why Muldrotha's here. We'll just leave it there, hold up the Anguished Unmaking. I'm half tempted to go after the Sapphire Medallion, but I also want rid of Yisan. Out comes Baral immediately, 5 cards in our opponent's hand now. And that is an Obnixilis Unshackled. That switches off our cultivates and all that type of stuff. Don't really like seeing that. That might have to be the Anguished Unmaking. Clearly Baral doesn't have a Mystical Tutor or anything like that in hand if they choose to allow this. It does switch off Yisan as well, which is bad news. Followed by a Lightning Greaves. So if we want to get rid of that thing, we'll have to get rid of it now. Alright, just came to a little deal with my opponent that if they leave me alone, I will get rid of the Obnixilis. They said that they can remove the Lightning Greaves if needs be, so we know they've got artifact removal in hand. Now, I was going to say, we need to see if Baral allows it, but I don't think they've got any counter magic. They're just passing through the turns really quickly here. We lose even more life with that Anguished Unmaking. And Yisan goes in for an Elvish Mystic, and then most likely continuing to play on the Erebos' turn. I think we're just going in for a Golos activation here, to be honest. Now, we're not going to get bolted by the Mana Crypt, are we? Not again. And there we go, called it up. We do not get bolted. And there's a Kodama's Reach. Well, we can keep hold of that for now. Let's go for... We'll just tap our stuff first and see how we want to do this. Activate the Golos. And I think these do count as casts, so I think our opponent can... You may play them, so they're not counted as casting, and we get into a True Conviction to gain some life back. That's really good. Yeah, I don't think these count as being cast, although it does say cast there. I don't know if our opponent can counter here. It does say play on Golos, although that's probably so that it's inclusive of lands, because you don't cast lands. It goes on the stack, so I'm assuming that Baral can counter. Choosing to counter by the looks of it. Would really like to keep True Conviction. Oh, and no doubt countering because it's a big spell and they can get into a bunch of treasures. Well, this is what Muldrotha's for. And then they loot from the Baral. We will get down an island, and the swamp will go away forever. We can only play one land. We get some more Field of the Dead activations. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, I think it's time to go in for a Muldrotha here. Let's see if we can land it first. I don't really mind Muldrotha being countered, to be honest. Although it would be nice to get that True Conviction in. And a Pact of Negation comes down. So that's going to swallow up a lot of our opponent's mana. It's also getting cards out of their hand. They've only got 3 left now. So we're going to have to be careful on these wheels. They do draw with Baral. But it is a loot effect. Oh, they discarded Maze of Ith, by the way, on the previous loot. And now discarding an island. Let's, with the floating mana, go in for Kodama's Reach. And deciding to let that through by the looks of it. We've already got our mana fixed, so it's not likely that they're going to counter that. I'm going to go for a few planes here because we've got some heavy white cards in the deck, one of which we've already seen in the True Conviction. So we'll just throw one of those out. We've made a land this turn off of the top with Golos. So now it's time to hit Baral for the first time in the game. We seem to be the only one playing a combat-based deck, really. The only one so far, anyway. Just deciding to take the hit. Still 3 cards in hand, so they could still have a combat trick. I don't know if this is... Ah, there we are, Aetherize. I always talk about Aetherize. Now then, do we want Golos on top or not is the question. Oh no, it's to the hand. It's the 5 mana one that puts them on top, isn't it? Yeah, so Aetherize is to the hand, so that gets rid of some of our zombies. Gets it out of their hand at least. It's better them doing it now than when we're going for an Alpha Strike onto them. So we will, just take Golos back into the hand. And we've still got some zombies to block with, so that's fine. And now they've got to pay 5 mana into Pact of Negation. They've still got plenty of mana thanks to the treasures, but they've only got 2 cards in hand now. We've done a good job in removing a lot of cards from their hand. We got rid of the Aetherize, the Pact of Negation, and the Spell Swindle. So that kind of opens up the gates for everyone else. So after paying for the Pact of Negation, there are 6 mana from the treasures, and then 4 here. Followed by a Dig Through Time, getting rid of what I assume was a bunch of lands. They get rid of Fabricate and some lands to cast the Dig Through Time. So that is a 4 mana Dig Through Time as I work it out. Then cycling a Remote Isle as well. So they end up with 6 mana and 4 cards in hand. Now going for Curious Homunculus. And how do you flip this? At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 3 or more instants and or sorceries, you flip it. And yeah, so at the beginning of their upkeep, that's going to turn into a 3/4 with Prowess. And cost reductions on instants and sorceries. Should be easy enough for them. And then there is an Animate Dead onto Muldrotha. Animate Dead, and they can still go after the... Oh no, we exiled it, didn't we? Yeah, luckily we exiled the Ob Nixilis, so they could have recast it. So what do they want here? There's Necropotence. They've still got 6 cards in hand. Maybe Liliana. Yeah, I don't really know what they want to go for here. Maybe the Wayfarer's Bauble and the Eldest Reborn. And there is even more counter magic from Baral, so at least it's not all coming in our way. Don't know if I would have countered that, to be honest, because I don't really see too much of what the black player's going for. Maybe if they go for Eldest Reborn, it forces them to sacrifice this, but do they really care about having to sack that? So the mono blue player continuing to annoy everyone. They do untap lands with that as well, so it was sort of free. They had to use treasure tokens, but now they end up with some untapped mana, which is pretty much permanent mana. And then, Liliana, Dreadhorde General. If you want to counter anything, you want to counter this thing. Liliana Dreadhorde General is I'm pretty sure this is my new favourite Planeswalker. I really like this. I like Elspeth Sun's Champion, Kiora the Crashing Wave. Yeah, there's a few I really like, but this one is excellent. Okay, going for a Hinder onto that as well, and Erebos deciding not to stick it out anymore. They still had a full grip, so clearly they just don't want to play against mono blue control. I mean, Baral only has 1 card left in hand. And they didn't get the loots from the Hinder there. Yisan at the end of the turn going in for an activation again. And that's the card you will typically see gone for with Yisan, the Quirion Ranger. That is return a forest and untap a creature. They can untap Yisan with that, of course. And they have the mana for 2 activations now. And over to our turn we go. So just like last time, we're not going to get bolted with the crypt. And there we go, it works. We do not get bolted, so I'm just going to have to say that every time now we get into Prismatic Vista, which is double land drops. So let's just go for Golos immediately. And unbelievably, the last card in Baral's hand is Counter Magic. That is the Exile one, isn't it? Yeah, well, we don't have to worry about Exile with our commander. But Baral does loot here. Looting with 0 cards in hand is not particularly good. Is it a May ability? You may. So all they're going to do is put a card into their graveyard here. So let's just... Yeah, let's go for a bunch of landfall here with Prismatic Vista. And that way we get a bunch more mana with the Gaia's Cradle. I'm going to grab a black mana source just in case someone gets rid of Urborg. And that means that Gaia's Cradle will tap for 8 mana. Let's see how much our commander costs. That is 9 mana. So let's go straight in for that. And in comes our Golos again. Now, what land do we want to go for? Maybe just the Thespian Stage to get another Field of the Dead. Yisan doing something in response here, so let's see what they go for before we decide. They go for Phyrexian Revoker, which will switch off our Golos. So that makes me more adamant on going in for a wheel. It also makes me more adamant on swinging into them. We'll definitely go for the triggered ability, even though we can't activate our Golos' activated ability. Where are we now? Let's go Thespian Stage. Does come into play tapped, but we'll activate that next turn. Get more zombie triggers. And I don't want to go for a wheel because it will refill Baral's hand, and we've already taken 2 or 3 turns off trying to get rid of Baral's stuff. So I'm just going to pressure my opponent with these zombies. They can untap their Yisan in response to this attack and block one of the zombies, but deciding to just take it seemingly. Now the Curious Homunculus is going to flip and make the instants and sorceries that Baral draws even better. They can draw with the Blighted Cataract if they just get into a land here. And if they're going for a wheel of their own, it's not the end of the world for us, because we were always going to discard a wheel to whichever one of these we play. And if we cast one of these, then it just means Baral's hand gets refilled anyway, so at least it was at their behest and not ours. We're forcing our opponent to get into their own card draw currently, as opposed to us feeding it to them. Alright, it is a Muddle the Mixture for Transmute. They can grab a 2-mana spell with that. I don't really know what they want to grab here, to be honest. We'll soon find out. And while they're deciding, there's a discussion going on between the Erebos and the Yisan player here as to the fact that Erebos shouldn't have scooped. I actually agree with the Yisan player there. There's counter magic flying around and it is a pain, but Baral now has very, very few cards in hand, and I don't think anyone ate more of that control than I did, so Erebos scooping there was a bit preemptive. What did they go for? Oh good, Isochron Scepter. If they don't play that, it might be worth going for the wheel to get it out of their hand. It's the only card in their hand currently, but they may go for getting rid of this. They're no doubt trying to go infinite with the Isochron Scepter. Okay, they just play Isochron Scepter with nothing to imprint underneath it. I don't know. Maybe I'm not understanding something here. Unless it's just infinite prowess that they're looking for. You may copy the exile card. Can you actually go for 2 and tap on this and not cast anything? I don't really know how that works. You usually put Dramatic Reversal under this and go for infinite mana and infinite untaps, which they will be able to do with a Sol Ring in play. But I don't know if it works when there's nothing imprinted underneath it. Okay, but the Yisan player, that is no doubt the card that they had for the Lightning Greaves earlier on. Like I said, I don't know if you can do anything without it being imprinted, so I don't know if that's a good play or not. If you can't do anything with it being on the board without imprint, then it might have been a waste of a card there. But then again, what else is our opponent going to use the Krosan Grip on currently? Maybe our True Conviction if we get that back out of the bin. So that goes down and it goes back round to Yisan's turn. We need to deal with Yisan as best as we can, as soon as possible. They didn't go for another activation onto Yisan either. They could have done that by bouncing a land. I think they can do this only once each turn, yeah, so they can do it on each of our opponent's turns if they want to. Just playing a land and passing straight over, as Yisan tends to. And because I forgot to call it, we lost the flip to the Mana Crypt. We get into another land. I'm going to play the Plains. We'll have that become a copy of the original Field of the Dead. So now we've got 3. We will play the planes. We'll get 3 triggers. And then it's just a case of continuing to swing in everything at this Yisan player because we want rid of that Phyrexian Revoker. So let's see if they can do anything here. Well, they're going for an activation in response. And they go for Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. That's a good blocker for them and it's more mana. They can only cast creature spells. They can't put that mana into the Yisan's activation. But like I said, it is a blocker for them at least. But they're still set for taking 21 points of damage, I think it is. And this time going for another activation on the Quirion Ranger. So they'll get a 4-drop here as well. Maybe go for a Solemn. And this is what Yisan does. Chains off a bunch of activations together. They're really starting to come into their own now because they decided to stick it out through all the tortuous turns earlier on. Being rewarded for their patience now currently. And they get into a bunch more mana with Karametra's Acolyte. That is per devotion to green. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's actually not that much. But tapping one creature down for 5 mana is still really, really good. And it's also another blocker for them. So that will be... they block a zombie and Golos. And it'll be 18 points. They just decide to block 2 zombies instead of blocking with the Golos. And as much as I'd love to go for the wheel, I think we're just best playing it nice and slow. And going in for the zombie victory on Yisan next turn, hopefully. We might at least still be able to get them to block with the Phyrexian Revoker. But feeding a control Baral player much more cards is the last thing I want to do. I'm surprised they haven't cracked this thing yet, to be honest. Oh, Narset Parter of the Veil switches off our wheels anyway. Well, there's nothing we can do about it. I say we just leave that in play anyway. Although, it might be worth going in at this thing so that they can't wheel. Are they going to rip into Narset and a wheel off the top, is the question. It may still not affect us anyway, because if we get rid of Yisan, we get rid of this thing, and then we can carry on activating Golos. I don't think it's too likely that a mono blue player is going to get rid of Field of the Deads. They decided to minus down on Narset, and it is a non-creature non-land, which means they have to reveal. Oh, and they've got Cyclonic Rift, excellent. So hopefully they will wait on the Cyclonic Rift until we've taken out Yisan. So we're definitely swinging in at Yisan next turn. We'll just turn everything sideways in that direction to try and keep them off Cyclonic Rift. The good thing about this Field of the Dead deck is that Rift doesn't really do much to us because we can rebuild our zombie army pretty quickly. The thing we'd really like to get into is the incarnations. We've got the Haste, the Flying, and the Black one in the deck. And I would quite like the Haste one at the moment. I thought about putting Buried Alive in here. We've only got... what is it called? There's the 1 mana instant one. 1 black that puts something in the bin. I've only got that one. I didn't go for Buried Alive. Plenty of tweaking still to be done to this deck. I'm sure people could really go crazy with it and make it way better, but I don't have anywhere near as much time as I would like to pour into these decks and go over the decks with a fine-tooth comb. So going straight back over to our turn, and hopefully Yisan can't do anything too crazy. I don't think they can get themselves up to a Crater Hoof to effectively block all of our zombies. They can go for a 6-drop, which is the Thunderfoot Bailoff. Yeah, that might change things. But our opponent's got Rift anyway, so I think we bounce back from a Rift better than our opponent does. And again, forgot to call out the Mana Crypt, so we get bolted. And another land in Reflecting Pool. Let's just go straight through to combat and hope that there's no rift cast. Our opponent should really look at where we're swinging in first before they go for the rift. Okay, Yisan going for an activation straight away. Not going for an activation, casting something else. Going for Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. I forgot about that. What is it, Biomancy or something like that? Each player's life total becomes the number equal to the number of creatures they control. And yeah, with a Cyclonic Rift, that means that Baral can win the game here. That's might have been an oversight by my opponent, I'm not sure. Yeah, they didn't say anything in the chat. But we all don't have any creatures in play now. And we can't cast Golos at instant speed, so yeah. Oh well, Baral wins this one apparently. So there we are, each player's life total becomes equal to the number of creatures they control. And yeah, the mono green player deciding to be very honest at least. They didn't make out as if they did that on purpose. They were very honest about it, but yeah, I don't really like that. If they'd done that on purpose, then I'd be a bit more annoyed about that, to be honest, because taking us out of the game just because you can, and letting someone else entirely win instead of letting us duke it out and see who can win. Yeah, that's not really the way to do things, but the Yisan player was very honest and said that they didn't do that on purpose. So I think that was interesting nonetheless. It shows what we want to do. We've got 3 copies of Field of the Dead. We want to get a bunch of Field of the Deads out. I want to try and get into the Incarnations, and then we've got Evasion and Haste and means of getting a lot of damage through to our opponents. And I've also got the Divine Visitation to make a bunch of Angels. Maybe that I have to include things like Yarok and oh, I don't know, I'm sure there's 1,000,001 things I could add to the deck, mana doublers and things like that for more Golos activations. So yeah, an interesting one that I think, and it's been very difficult to get a game with this Golos Field of the Dead deck, so hopefully you all enjoyed this one even though we lost it. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.